Welcome to your Innovation Coffee Break. I'm Vijay Rajendran from 500 Startups Ecosystems team, where I lead our corporate innovation team. I'm excited to be joined today by Rebecca Woodcock of Yamaha Ventures. Rebecca, welcome. How's it
Thank
going?
you, VJ. Oh, it's going great.
Yeah,
Enjoying this beautiful weather that we're having all of a sudden.
awesome. Well, it's a special privilege today to have Rebecca join us for Innovation Coffee Break because Rebecca is an alumna of 500 Startups.
Yeah, in more ways than one, actually. Back in 2011, when I founded my own startup, 500 Startups was one of my investors. And so after I exited the company in 2015, I then joined as an EIR and quickly became a venture partner for about 4 years, leading all the health tech investments there in San Francisco. So yes, I've been a part of 500 in one way or another for many years.
And now you're at Yamaha Ventures. Can you tell us
Yes.
a little bit about Yamaha Ventures?
Yeah, absolutely. So Yamaha Motor Ventures, it's the venture arm for Yamaha Motor. We have $100 million fund that was closed last year, about a year ago. And we are making seed and Series A investments, anywhere checks from 250K up to 3 million. And we are really focused on three areas today. We may expand these in the future, but mobility obviously is one of them because Yamaha has a big presence in the mobility space with motorcycles and drones and marine business. So the future of mobility is a big focus for us. Agriculture tech as well is another big area with regards to the shortage of labor that agriculture has and how robotics can fill the gap in a lot of those shortages. And then health tech is one of those areas, and that's the area that I lead. So I can explain a little bit more later as to why that's important for Yamaha. I'm a principal there. I've been there for about um, 8 months now, and so yeah, it's been very interesting.
And you're based, here in the Bay Area. Uh,
I am.
where are you? Where are your team? Are they all here?
Yeah, they're more or less all in the Bay Area somewhere or another, between San Jose and San Francisco. Our office is in Palo Alto, but now that we are in shelter in place, we're all working remotely and via Zoom, like most other people in the valley.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And do you invest primarily in U.S. startups?
No, actually, we're investing globally. It doesn't matter where the startup is. We can make it happen as long as they're a great team and interesting technology.
That's right. Now,
Yeah,
certainly, the uh, the borders are disappearing for us
totally.
with distributed workforce, ability to connect virtually in ways like this, and then now connecting with startups and investing in them everywhere. It's an exciting time.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
and how do you find your top management inside Yamaha Motors, likes to engage and be a kind of a consumer of the work that the venture team does?
Yeah, absolutely. Our management team, we meet with them once every 2 weeks and give them updates as to what's happening. They're very engaged. They recognize that the venture piece is an important part to just the future of Yamaha in general and exploring. It's an exploratory fund, so it allows us to um, make bets in areas that they don't necessarily have business units in, and maybe we'll never have business units in, but have a passion or an interest, and that becomes eventually a part of Yamaha's vision and future. So they're highly engaged.
Mhm. That's awesome, and that's one of the archetypes that we covered in our Unlocking, corporate venture capital report is there's the Explorer model of CVC investors, which is one of the most successful ones, which is highly strategic in nature, is very integrated into what management is thinking, and then is able to go out and discover new worlds, so to speak. So kudos to you and the team for kind of taking on that shape of of CVC. But I'm dying to get into a topic that is near and dear to your heart, and that is on health tech. It's a big field. We're going through certainly a time in history where health and health technologies and so on are more important than ever to us. First of all, how do you think about your kind of landscape of how you look at the healthcare world and how you want to invest in it?
Yeah, and to be honest with you, with so many things changing, I am reevaluating what is it that we see as opportunities and where should we place our bets. So I don't have all the answers now, but I can tell you that there's been some major themes that have been driving me already, and some are absolutely being accelerated right now. So there's three mega trends that are that I've been looking at. One is the fact that we have a shrinking healthcare workforce. It's already a shortage. There's just not enough healthcare workers, and with our chronic disease, proliferation and the aging populations, we just don't have enough people to care for those that need it. And this has completely been amplified by the current situation. We've got the movement for health in the home, healthcare in the home. That already was a movement to begin with because of the initiatives for aging in place, knowing that we just don't have the capacity in all of the different clinics, nursing homes, hospitals for our aging population. That also has been accelerated by the current situation. And then there's the notion of advancing, how do we make people healthier and stronger for longer? So preventing diseases, or how do we reinforce the body or mind and bring them to another level from the baseline? And these are kind of themes that are driving me. I plan on publishing something in the next 2 months about how we're going to really drill down into each of these areas. But those are the high level themes that are driving how I look at the health investments that we do.
That's super exciting and really rich. We can probably do a separate innovation coffee break on each of those.
Yeah.
I think what you've underscored is that healthcare is changing very fast, and to sort of piggyback on what you said, the things that we thought were going to happen much further in the future are happening before our eyes. So while we can't maybe come up with a 5 or 10 year outlook instantly, there are things that we can do as investors today, because if you're investing in the future and you get there even faster, that seems like a great way to be a successful VC.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing that, like you said, what we thought, we knew it was going to happen already. Telehealth, moving healthcare into the home on a 5-year horizon, on a 7-year horizon, much slower. That's been sped up dramatically. So now it's, what's the new 5-year trend, like what's going to be next now that we're seeing telehealth being adopted like mad right now. What's next? And so there are some themes that I'm seeing. Of course, you know, like when you have this telehealth massive adoption, and we'll see even greater adoption in fall once we see the next surge. But that also leads to, you know, more remote patient monitoring, which means more data about the human, which means can we get smarter technologies, smarter AI as a result of that? We have a lot of, you know, digital health is having their heyday right now. Digital therapeutics. We've seen a big push for digital therapeutics in diabetes, and that's been successful. So crowded space, but all of a sudden, everything that is non-acute or anything that could be outpatient or in the home suddenly needs a solution. Not just the big problems like diabetes, all of the conditions that don't require a hospital or clinic that can be done in the home. So there's a lot of opportunities there, and that's just the scratching the surface. I think there's going to be a lot of interesting things that telehealth enables as well, and so we're trying to figure out what is that next thing.
With that change in adoption, are there any changes in terms of interoperability between, you know, all the ways in which we're collecting data and monitoring and so on that, you know, encourage you right now?
Well, oh yeah, 100%. I'm going to go down a little journey on memory lane to 10 years ago when I launched my startup, and healthcare was just charts and clipboards. And you know, you go to the doctor and they have files on you, paper files. The problem with that is that you can't analyze the data and determine what is actually a good outcome. Was this procedure and the way it was done over here better than this one? No way to know that. And so, you know, one thing that we did back then was scrape the data, and there were no APIs, there was nothing like that. But that also led me to be invited to be part of a task force at the White House around determining data standards for patient access of their health data. So under the Obama administration, we started working on how to create the taxonomy and the data standards that laid a foundation that could then be developed into APIs, which have then been developed. And now with the most recent, there's a recent ruling from the Office of the Coordinator, the ONC, the Office of the National Coordinator for Health Interoperability Data. They have issued a final rule about data blocking. So once you have the APIs and the data standards, the next issue was nobody published the content, right? So now there's an issuance of a regulation that you cannot block data that has been requested by the patient. So they have to publish that data if it's been requested. Now we have an API and we have data standards. There's no excuse. And next year, you know, Medicare and all the Medicaid, CHIPS, and a lot of the government agencies are going to be pushing out all this data and making sure that the exchanges, which are state by state actually, are interoperable. So that's a little history about the infrastructure. Then you look at EHRs, and
this is all like just changed in the last couple of months, it sounds like.
It's changing very quickly. Now you have the explosion of data in the home, right? Remote patient monitoring devices, and this has been going on for a while. You know, you have the Fitbits and the Garmins and all sorts of data like that. How do you aggregate it? And so interoperability over the next year or two is gonna, I think, go to another level. We've been waiting for it for a long time, so maybe I'm optimistic, but I think a lot of interesting things can be done when you have access to the data. And that's where decision engines and AI, and that's when you can start making things smarter. We haven't been able to realize any of that yet because there's been limits to access of the data.
So the data is going to be there. We'll have to get smart at how to analyze it.
Yeah.
And then how does that need to be presented to a healthcare provider to make the kinds of intelligent and informed decisions in a way that they can adopt?
Yeah, that's been a big issue with AI, you know, or the lack thereof. You know, one complaint that doctors have is that they get all this data and it's too much information and they don't have time to process it or integrate it into their workflow. And yet there have been some regulations that have prevented AI from actually making the decisions. So the FDA has had some restrictions on AI interpreting the data. They have to still send it to a doctor to be interpreted and have responses, right? The regulation is being loosened on that in some use cases, so that in certain use cases, the AI can actually interpret the data now. And I think that, you know, interpreting the data and making sense of it is important for the whole infrastructure, especially given the shortage of healthcare workers. So I'm hoping that this is a sign that the FDA is willing to learn more and more about AI. I think they've already created some really good pathways for startups using AI to be flexible with them. I just hope it allows the technology to get smarter and smarter and actually make some intelligent decisions and interpretations that at least can be supervised in the short term. We'll see, maybe replaces people in the long term.
And that supervision is for like good ethics in AI and putting that in practice, right?
Yeah, that's one of the problems with AI is the ethics behind it and how it is written and how is the algorithm going to make that determination that is not only safe. I think safety can be proven, but that's also, you know, you have social determinants, or there's a lot of data that minorities you know, factor into just the logic unknowingly, right? And so the ones that are writing the algorithms have to really, you know, be thoughtful but also transparent. That's, I think, the important thing for regulators is they have to be transparent and document how is this algorithm working and working in an ethical and safe way.
You mentioned a moment ago, like the Fitbits and the Garmins and other devices that have become pretty ubiquitous. However, in becoming ubiquitous, those companies and other kinds of medical devices are looking less and less like the traditional like hardware that we've known in the past, right?
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of the hardware that you see in the home today has really been commoditized. And so if you're a device manufacturer, there's probably not a lot of value that you're bringing. You know, anything from blood glucose monitors, pressure cuffs, even a lot of the wearables, all of these sensors have really become, you can just white label them now. And so the companies that are experiencing a lot of growth are the ones that have the data. They're not a device-driven company. They're a data-driven company and an insights and a solutions-based company. Maybe they're providing a therapeutic as a result of the data or the collection of the data. And so these companies are very different than device companies. the, the real opportunity, I think, for device companies, and I think this has yet to be played out, is when you look at complex medical devices that are used by technicians in a clinical or a hospital setting. We are likely to be seeing those move into the home, and those become smarter devices where the device can actually guide the human, the patient, to use it correctly and not have a technician. That's where the device, we'll see what evolves in the home, but I think those eventually will be commoditized as well. That has a longer timeline though.
Yeah, that seems like that will be the holy grail of sorts to achieve getting those those devices, giving us a bunch of rich data and
Yeah.
then knowing like how to use it better.
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to be easy. There's a famous, well, I don't know if it's famous, but I'm aware of it. An AI experiment that Google did with a hospital in Thailand, evaluating some eye disease, and they developed the AI in sort of this perfect setting where, you know, the image quality was a certain type and the workflows worked a certain way. And then when they put it into the actual work environment, workflows were just chaotic. The image qualities were not up to standard, and the AI completely failed. They had to scrap the project altogether. But it's an example of, you know, these things, if they're developed in a perfect world, it's not going to be applicable in real life. And so those are going to be some challenges that any of these device makers or AI makers, you know, they're dealing with a lot of variation. And how do they train that intelligence to understand what to do in those situations?
We've talked a lot about AI, which, you know, is that on the tip of everyone's tongue these days. I'm curious, is there an underrated technology today that you're a fan of?
That's a very difficult question. And the way I would answer it is, the most underrated technology is actually the human itself. And I'll tell you why. So at Yamaha, we developed a robot that would drive a motorcycle. And the goal was to have this robot emulate the top sponsored racer that, you know, competes in all of the games. He's the best. And so over time, this robot learned how to drive like the top racer. And eventually they were performing at the same level, except for one area. It was the turns. The robot actually outperformed the driver. And what they realized was the thing that was holding back the rider was the unknown of what would happen if he pushed certain limits. It was the fear. It was fear, right? And so in this instance, the robot actually taught the human where the edges were, that you could push to this level and or use this technique to go faster, to go around this curve, that the human didn't know where that boundary was and was afraid to go. This is important because it's not the technology that needs to be advanced. We can make the technology better than anything in the world, right? But how do we make the human either physically or mentally catch up to the technology? It's about the operator. It's about what we can do as people. And so that's an example of why this is a big initiative within Yamaha Motor, is It's called Art for Human Possibility. How can we use technology, robotics, mobility, not as the technology, but to make the person better? And that's why health tech is an important area for Yamaha. It's about making the human perform, advance, become better, because the technology in many cases is already there, and now we as the human technology need to be, can be improved. I don't know, that I got very passionate about that.
No, that's amazing, because like that's what we all want. We all want to have technology help us and live better lives as a result of it. And what more worthy, you know, direction than health, and particularly in times like this.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I think we're gonna have to leave it here. Thanks so much for joining me for Innovation Coffee Break, Rebecca. This has been enlightening, and really excited about the things you're doing and investing in at Yamaha Motor Ventures.
Thank you. Thank you. It was a pleasure. Nice to see you.
Thank you.